All right, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and start this webinar. So today I'm actually going to discuss the research process, the pattern of the research process and how to generate ideas and going forth into creating that thesis statement before you begin even writing your paper. And first of all, I'm just going to introduce myself. I have Deanna on the other screen. She's the Learning Center manager. She is on here because I needed access to the webinar version of the Zoom session. So she'll be in the background. And we'll also be recording this session for training purposes, but we'll also use this video to post onto our YouTube channel for students that are not attending this webinar. So first of all, my name is Kwana Yazi. And I am originally from Rock Point Center. This at the Tsaili Learning Center. I'm one of several professional writing tutors. I specialize in English and writing. We also have some other tutors that specialize in math and other courses depending on what the students need this semester. So we are subject-based tutors. So if we've taken any of your NAVO courses or any math courses at your level, we are able to tutor, students within those areas. So let's just go ahead and get into this webinar. All right, let me share my screen. All right, so a lot of what I'm going to share today, it's just going to be very auditory. So a lot of everything I'll be explaining won't be in the presentation. It'll just be me elaborating on some of these things. So just keep that in mind. And there is an option to ask questions. If you want to ask questions, you can. And then I should be able to answer them to the best of my ability. All right, so here's our agenda for today. Let's see if this can. All right, so our agenda for today includes, so again, we'll be going over the research process. So what I'm going to go over today is sort of between a beginner and an intermediate level of starting the process of research, finding your topic. So that's what we'll go into first, is finding your topic. And here you'll learn how to generate ideas and, learn questions like how can you narrow down your topics to be more interesting. And another we'll hit today is guiding your research. And a lot of what I'll talk about within this portion is questioning and critically thinking about the topics that you've chosen. And then next we'll go into collecting relevant data. So what kind of research is there? Where can we go to research and find sources and things like that? And then lastly, I'll jump into how to develop a thesis, with a general formula within English writing. So that's our agenda for today. And yeah, so we'll go to the next slide. So first, what is a topic, right? So a topic is a general idea of interest. We've all heard what a topic is. It's often just a name or a word in most cases, but sometimes it can be 2 or 3 ideas together. So in this case, for an example, here we have 2 ideas in computer games, and then we have an idea within violence. We have an idea within costs and college education. So there's 2 ideas again for that topic. And we have automobiles, which is just 1 idea, and so forth. So racism, 1 topic, women and rights is 2 topics, 2 ideas to make a topic. Sports and advertising is 2 ideas to make 1 topic, and so forth. So topic is a place to start, right? But the problem is that the topics can be very broad for a paper, meaning that the topic is very open and there's no focus. So an example could be just automobiles here. So just saying automobiles can mean a lot of things, right? Things like cars and planes, anything that is automatic and mobilizes objects. So these topics here are very broad. when we're choosing. So let's try to avoid that. So, choosing a topic can be a little difficult, right? So sometimes we get so stuck at choosing something to write about. Sometimes it gets disinteresting or it gets uninteresting. And the best way to get started with choosing a topic is sort of relating it to yourself, right? So when we are related to yourself or ourselves, we begin to be involved in this research, and it sort of springs up some more excitement, some liveliness and things like that. So what I would suggest is asking yourself some questions before you even begin to know, like, what are some current issues that matter to you? What are some current events or issues that you don't understand? And, an example can be maybe, let's see, what is happening now that I don't understand for myself? See if I can think of one. Maybe hemp farms, right? Some of you may know that there is some controversial issues around hemp farming here on the Navajo Nation currently. I see on Facebook all the time, do people agree or disagree? I personally don't understand anything about it. I have not read anything and things like that, but it still is a current issue and people are well aware of the situation. So that's a way to sort of spring up some new topics, is to ask yourself some questions. What current issues matter to you? What current events or issues do you not understand? And other ways to find a topic is just talking to people. So your friends and your family, ask them what matters to them, and the most important, ask them why. So that way you generate ideas and, arguments and things things you agree or disagree with. That way you spring up new ideas for a topic. And you can also be more independent. If you're an independent learner, you can go online, of course, and search for topics that may be interesting to you. We always can use the Google searches, or you can use the library and writing centers that are provided on the internet, and so forth. So once we have that topic,
somebody raised their hand. I'm allow them to talk. August?
Okay.
Does somebody have a question?
If you guys have a question, you can just ask in the Q&A at the very bottom of the screen in the Zoom session. That way we don't interrupt the presentation. We just go ahead and move through. I can't see it because I'm sharing my screen.
Okay, go ahead. I don't hear.
Okay, so once we have our topic right, we can then begin to develop it even further. So this is where we begin to consider things like our audience and your purpose and contextual requirements, by your instructors and your professors. So once you have your topic, it's great to ask, why might my audience care about this topic? What might they already know about it? We want to involve our audience as much as possible because that's who we're writing for, right? It's our audience. And once we know our audience, it begins to develop even further into how we write. And we're not going to get into that sort of portion. That's more into structuring and developing your paper as a whole. And other things to consider is the purpose, like the purposeful questions. How does this topic help me address the assignment's purposes? Will this topic expand my learning? How can I shape this topic into a purpose that will interest my audience? And then into context requirements, like length requirements by your instructors. Is the topic complex? Is there a lot within that topic enough for me to fulfill the requirements of my assignment? And what is happening around this topic that might affect how my audience thinks or feels or acts? So consider, involving your audience and your own purpose of this paper. What do you want to gain? What do you want to gain out of it? And making sure it fits those context requirements. All right, so once we have our topic and you feel that it is very strong, it's something that we can focus on, we can sort of begin to narrow it down. And, you know, we could still have a broad topic, like in this case, I have global warming as the broad topic, the main topic, but narrow topics usually relate a topic to, these are the 4 common places where topics are related to. They're related to specific places, locations. They're related to time, related to actions, and groups of people. And there's plenty more categories in which we relate a topic to. And here's an example with global warming, right? We have global warming as a very broad topic, and it could mean anything that we want it to mean. And if we add a specific place identifier to it, we then begin to narrow our topic a little more. So global warming education in elementary school. So elementary school is the location, the place where we want to focus global warming to. The same with time. Global warming over the last 25 years, that's what our focus is going to be on with time. Consequences and remedies of global warming, the actions of global warming. What are the consequences from it? And with groups of people, government interest in prevention of global warming. So we're attaching groups of people to our topic. And that's the best way to start to sort of narrow your topic a little bit more, is to add categories to your topic specifically. So we have, these are the common 4 that I usually run across all the time. So specific place, time, actions, and groups of people. So then once we have our narrow topic, we then begin to we want to sort of question. This is not working. We want to question our topic that we've chosen, this very narrow topic, and we want to then begin sort of guiding it to a place where we want it to fulfill an ability to have enough sources, resources, and things like that. So how do we guide our research question or our narrow topic to generate a lot of sources? And a guide to when you want to begin guiding your research, you know, the main thing is questioning your narrow topic, and this will help your research, shape your research, and can also help you determine which questions are rich and which ones are strong for research. And a great technique is using the art of persuasive speech. And we can also go into things like the rhetorical triangle, you know, using the rhetorical triangle in pathos, logos, and ethos, and things like that. The art of emotion, the art of credibility, and the art of I forget the last one, is relating to statistics, but you know, using the art of persuasive speech. And in this case, with persuasive speech, we have things like questions of fact, questions of definition, interpretation, consequence, value, and policy. And I'll go ahead and dive into what some of these things mean. And for questions of fact, the first one, we have our narrow topic, right? And we want to sort of start asking our topic, you know, these questions here: what happened, who was involved, where did it happen, when did it happen? So you're using those 5 W's and the H, you know, asking around that topic that you've chosen. And these questions actually focus on, you know, what is true, what is not true, what does or does not exist, what did or did not happen. And I'll show you what these questions can help, how they can help you later on the presentation in looking for those sources, those valuable and reliable sources. So then the next one is questions of definition. These questions focus on defining your topic and appropriations on usage. So what is the thing or issue under discussion? What is it made of? What is the expected way of using the thing, word, title, or expression? So here we're actually defining more into the topic itself. Where is it springing from, and things like that. All right, hold on. So I have a question here from Karen. So she's saying, I'm doing a research on climate change. Where do I start, or how do I start? And the same thing of, I just explained a few moments ago, we have this topic, right? You have this climate change topic. Now, where do we go from there with this climate change topic? We want to narrow that down, right? Because climate change is very broad as well. What about climate change do you want to relate that to? Do you want to relate it to humans? Like, I don't know, like how or when, what are the consequences of climate change? It's up to you to break down that narrowed topic. And then from there, we can go into questioning, and I'll go into that as well. I have one. Where will this recording be posted at? So this recording will be posted on our YouTube channel with the Learning Center. And you can go to our internal website on MyDNet College. If you go to Learning Center resources within MyDNet College, where you do all of your, where you can see your bills, your grades, and things like that. You'll see it within that little portal there. It should say Learning Center resources. And within there, you'll have access to everything that we provide, our YouTube channel, our Facebook, and things like that. All right, so back to this presentation. I'm gonna go to the next one. So next one is the questions of interpretation. These questions focus on developing ideas and how we can incorporate our ideas into our writing. So how do we understand and make sense of what happened? How are we to incorporate facts and definitions into a story that makes sense? So these questions actually involve both, the questions of the fact and the questions of the definition. Along the way, I'll go ahead and stop here and there to answer questions. I'm getting a lot of questions so far. All right, hold on. All right, next one is questions of consequence. So these questions focus on developing problems related to your topic and offer possible thoughts and solutions. So let's say we're focusing on climate change, right? So what caused climate change to happen? And that's where we generate more questions and more questions. What changes led to the issue at hand? What changes led to climate change? Then we ask ourselves those questions towards our topics. What are the effects of climate change? Who is affected from climate change? What changes might result from what happened with climate change? The one thing I wanted to stress is that when you're asking these questions, it's great to just list them down as a whole list as much as you can. Just ask questions towards your topic. And then the next one is questions of value. These questions focus on what you consider good or bad, moral or immoral, just or unjust. Is that state good, useful, worth of praise, or worth of blame? What audience will value the matter at hand? What do people say about the issue? Which of our values are called upon as we make judgments about what happened? And then lastly, the questions of policy. These questions focus on what should be done, what procedures should be adopted, and what laws should change. In short, what policies should be followed. So here you're given the circumstances, what should we do about this issue? What rules or policies should we make or enforce? What laws should we write or enforce? So here you're sort of providing a solution to the problem. So using these these question categories, they'll help you see areas of research you have not even considered. It opens more possibility into what we can actually focus on. You can start to eliminate things. You can start to elaborate more on things that interest you more. And it'll also help you see possible ways for shaping your purposes. It helps answer questions your audience might have. specific research directions you need to take, and whether your opinions on the topic is well informed. So using these, just an example here. So let's say we have this topic of minimalism, right? So let's narrow that down a little bit to minimalist lifestyle. So minimalism is, it could mean a lot of things. Here I attach lifestyle to sort of point it towards the direction of a human actually involved in minimalism. And if we were to narrow that down, I chose, why people choose a minimalistic lifestyle. So this narrow topic, I'm starting to question why people are choosing to live minimal. And then, if I were to use questions of the fact, which is that first one, and I start to answer questions, start to question my topic, I say things like, how long has the notion of minimalism existed? This is me asking my topic and trying to discover things around my topic. So how long has the notion of minimalism existed? When did it start? How did it start? Things like that. And then if we're going to questions of definition, how do different people define minimalism? This is where we start to explore the definition, the definition meaning of the word minimalism. And then questions of interpretation. What do people choose to own fewer things? Who do people believe that a minimalistic lifestyle helps them be more free? And then questions of consequence. What happens when people own fewer things? What can they do that they couldn't do before? Who benefits from a minimalist lifestyle? So these are examples I'm giving that relate to these question categories. And questions of value. When people choose to own fewer things, what do they value instead of stuff? So here we're going to what they value specifically. And then questions of policy, what policies encourage us to own many things. And again, the questions of policy is going back to where we're starting to find that solution, right? What solutions can we offer? So this is where we begin to question things like, if everyone lived this minimalistic lifestyle, how might policies change? So now we're questioning different solutions. So using these questions here, these are starting points into what we can actually talk about. So once we start to answer these questions, we can start going on the internet and start to research these questions alone. And from those questions, we then begin to find, key terms and search terms and keywords if we're using APA style. And when we're researching those questions, we start to find, things like these search terms. So here I have minimalism, frugality, the simple life. These are phrases as well. Living with less. Anti-consumerism. This could go into people that that don't want to that are not consumers and they're against it. A plain life, freedom from stuff, a Spartan life, and things like that. So using those question categories, again, generating all of these questions here, you can also begin to identify some areas that are most important to you. So maybe in this topic, it's just on this here. How might policies change if everyone lived this lifestyle? Maybe I want to focus on how do different people define minimalism? So using these questions can help you narrow this topic even further to generate a thesis statement. So then moving on, once we guided our research even further and questioned and critically thought about what we can actually focus on, we can then move into collecting relevant data. collecting this relevant data, we'll go into the kinds of research, where to research specifically. And those are the two things that I am going to focus on, is the kinds of research and where to research in relation to here, us at the Net College. So then when we're looking at kinds of sources, it's based upon the type of research that you're doing. And it's usually research is usually divided into primary, secondary, scholarly, and popular. And there is different sources for each of these type of researches, and we'll go into each of those. So primary sources, secondary sources, academic sources, and popular sources. So with primary sources, this is where it's anything that gives you direct evidence about the people that you're researching about. And it's usually the main object of your analysis. And if you're researching the past, you cannot directly access it yourself. So you need primary sources that were produced at the time by participants or witnesses. So what this means is basically it's the sources or the data that you collected yourself, or that other people produced, or they did this research themselves and they were directly involved in the topic. And some examples of that could be, history. If this was our topic in history, and we're going to do primary research. And again, primary research is us initiating ourselves into the research. We're actually conducting the research ourselves, or we're looking into sources of people that did the same thing. So with history, we have examples here as primary sources can be letters and diaries, because the letters and diaries are people that wrote those, and they actually wrote those things themselves. Photographs and video footage, the same thing. Official documents and records, the same thing. Physical objects, and so forth. So then within art and literature, you can use things like novels and poems. This whole relationship on the right is just actual objects and actual data that people have done themselves. And I'll show you the relationship of how primary sources is to secondary sources. So these are some examples of primary sources. So within law and politics, we have court records, legal texts, government documents, and within sciences, we have empirical studies and statistical data. So now when we go into secondary sources, now we're sort of relating it to primary sources. So a secondary source is anything that describes, interprets, evaluates, or analyzes information from that primary sources. So now we're taking that primary source. Let's say I'm the researcher, I am taking the primary sources. So I'm taking like a poem, or I'm taking a letter or a diary from someone that they wrote it. So now I'm taking that diary, and now I'm using it, and I'm analyzing it, and I'm evaluating it for my own research, and I'm writing it all down. And then what I wrote, that's what secondary sources are. And these secondary sources are things like books and articles, documentaries, synopses, encyclopedias, textbooks, reviews and essays and things like that. So it's a work of someone else's work. So work within another work. I think I explained that right, but yeah, so the secondary source, anything that describes, evaluates, analyzes primary sources themselves. And some examples here could be for secondary sources. So on the left here, we have primary sources, right? Let's say we have a novel, a book of some sort. And a secondary source related to the novel is an article analyzing that novel, just like what I explained a while ago. And if a primary source of a painting, secondary source of that is exhibition catalog explaining the painting and so forth. Again, letters and diaries, someone could write a biography of the historical figure. Someone wrote a biography of someone's letter and diaries. So it's just make sure we're not confusing primary versus secondary sources. And then results of an opinion poll, We have a blog post interpreting the results of the poll. All right. So then the next one is, I believe, academic sources. So this is also known as scholarly sources. So scholarly sources are written by researchers and have a thorough publication process, which usually involves peer reviewing. So they do a lot of the peer reviews and a list of references at the end of the text. Usually always written by a scholar or an expert within a specific topic. And it's saying that you'll see a lot of lists of references at the end of what they're referencing to conduct their own research. And these are usually things like books and academic journals, and their main purpose of academic sources is just to spread knowledge. It's just to spread that knowledge, not necessarily for them to do research, because the research is already done. Now they're just elaborating on the topic. So sometimes we use academic sources. Yeah. So then the next one is popular. So popular sources are intended for the public. They're intended for general audiences. And these are not peer reviewed, and they don't include that reference list. So these are things that are public domain. So like books and the magazines, websites, and blogs. And sometimes we tend to go back and forth in how we use, sources. Sometimes we use a lot of websites, right? We use a lot of blogs and magazines. And I believe I have a slide here that relates what type of research can help to identify what kind of sources we need. So here's an example again of what I'm talking about with identifying resources. So we'll go back to this minimalism example. So here we have these questions that we generated, right? And now I want to focus on one of them at least. This is to help what kind of sources I should be looking for. So let's go focus on this one. So let's say I'm pulling this question here. What happens when people own fewer things? So it's the questions of consequence. What happens when people own fewer things? So then when we take that out, we have this questions of consequence. What happens when people own fewer things? Our main goal of this question here is that we want statistics, right? We want results. We want these surveys and we want these polls. We want the results of what happens when people own fewer things. And to do this, to generate these sources, to generate data for our research, it's up to us to identify what we can actually use to involve within our research. And from what I explained before, the primary sources, secondary, academic, and popular, we can then identify which ones we can use. And with primary, again, primary research and sources is things that we're conducting on ourselves and things that people did that they conducted on themselves, but we're going to use it. So they were involved in the research itself. That's primary. But secondary, we're taking someone that actually did the research, and we're taking someone that wrote about someone taking research of these things. And academic sources is sources written by the scholars and the experts within the topic. So do you think we have experts within minimalism? Have they gotten sources out there? Have they written stuff about this? And then the last one's popular sources, using things that are public domain, the web, the blogs, and things like that, the websites. So using what we learned with identifying sources, we can then identify what sources we can use to answer this question up here, which in this case, strongly for me, I think we should focus on getting primary sources. And this involves me actually conducting the research. I can make a survey or poll and put it out there, and that's how I can collect my data. That's one of the strongest, I think, that we can use. Another is just using popular sources, things that we find on the website, like blogs, because minimalism is very trendy. And when we see things that are trendy like this, you'll eventually see them all over the web and what people actually think, what their opinions are, and things like that. So these two, I feel strongly, I believe that we use to answer this question, find sources, for this topic. And I don't think we can use secondary sources because we don't want to use something or an analysis or a research that was done on someone that did the research. I don't think that would be appropriate for answering this question with sources. So I crossed that out, and also academic sources. Again, I don't think there's a lot of people that are super experts into minimalism for them to create a book or a journal about minimalism specifically. So that's how we can, this is an example of how we can start to question how we can answer these questions to get all the sources we can possible. So then once we have, so ways to find these sources, it starts with the simple search using the Google or Yahoo, or those are the two leading search engines, is Google and Yahoo, because once we type in our sources or our key terms or our narrow topic, it then brings up, they bring up these scholarly databases and things like that, the articles. Another way to find resources is using online databases such as InfoTrack, LexisNexis, EBSCO, which provides access to latest research in hundreds of areas. We can also find sources using newspapers and magazines. Newspapers, just keep in mind that we want newspapers that are credible, newspapers that are true, like New York Times and the Time Magazine, Wall Street Journal. And then we want to finally utilize a library. And this is where often a lot of resources are located. And we sort of miss out on those, utilizing a library that is provided to us for free and things like that. And one of the main things about finding sources is that we want to always avoid Wikipedia at all times, because Wikipedia can be good in some cases, but in most cases it's not, because anyone can actually go into Wikipedia and edit things within the Wikipedia page. It's public domain. And the easiest way to edit things in Wikipedia is just creating an account and then literally hitting the edit button on a certain page. And then when you do that, you can actually edit the text. So it's not an actual reliable source to use if you're using Wikipedia. So let's try to avoid that. And I don't know if anyone here, going back to finding sources, I'm going to stop my share here, and I'm going to show you guys how to access the Net College library. I'll share my other screen here. Nope, not that one, this one. All right, so looking here, so when we're on the main Net College website, at the very bottom, we can scroll all the way down. We'll see something here at the bottom in the footer, and you'll see library. So we can just hit that portion there. And then it generates this portal here for the Net College library. And the main portion of when you're doing your research, you want to look here in this second portion here, the resources for research. There's also some other resources available for, the communities, faculty and staff, students, the library, locations, hours and staff. So this whole portal is everything about the library currently. And within this resources tab here, I'm gonna click it. This is where, from the presentation, where all those databases are located. And, the library here is actually embedded all of these databases in relation to subject areas in which you're researching. So for example, if I'm doing research in English, I can go into the research tab and go down to English, and here are all of the databases, the academic databases, online databases available for me within English that I can look through. And here's that EBSCO one that I listed in the presentation. And once you open these, all of these databases actually just focus on English itself if I'm just in here. There's also some in psychology, some in Native American studies, and things like that. So once we have our narrowed topic, so for climate change, we can go into environmental science here. And then let's just try environment complete. So this goes to EBSCO. And then within this little search, all of them will generate a search engine just like this. And here's where we'll actually put our topic, right? Our narrow topic. I don't know, what did we say? Climate change. Let's say effects on, do you guys see how I put climate change and all of these ideas are popping up? So here, this is very broad, right? Climate change. But once we start to narrow our topic a little bit, we start to see different things pop up. So let's say effects on one of these here. Let's say the ocean. Then we'll just hit search. And then here's it brings up all the key articles that are involved with the keywords that you typed here. So here there's a symposium, an academic journal based off of what you've chosen here in the top. So then we can go down, there's a bunch of resources within that topic. If you want something more, rather than an academic journal, you can just go to the left here, source types. So here they only have the option of magazines and academic journals. So how is this involved in magazines? So then this is where we'll find those. So the one thing about the library also is that if you're doing something more locally, research here on the Navajo Nation specifically, or in the area of Four Corners, if you're trying to look for magazines, and mainly magazines and newspapers, the Net College Libraries actually has major newspapers here on the reservation embedded in this database as well. And you can find articles from Navajo Times and the Daily Times or Gallup Independent and things like that, newspaper and magazines from our area. You can find them in Access World News, and I believe JSTOR. Those two there have that Navajo Times in the area newspapers and magazines embedded within their database. And it's good to access these because nowadays, Navajo Times, you need a subscription to read through an article, right? And you have to pay and things like that. But the good thing about the Net College Library is that we can actually access those articles for free. And we have to actually log in using the link here in the Net College, go into the library, go into resources, and then clicking on one of these two, Access World News or JSTOR. And then search for the article that you want to read completely, and then it should pop up. So that's the good thing about the Net College Library as well. All right, so let's see. All right, let me go back to the presentation. Oh, it's right here. Okay. So that's the way to find sources, and I showed you guys how to navigate to the Net College Library. All right, so next, the last thing on our agenda is building that thesis statement. Once we've got our idea, we narrowed our topic, we critically thought about our topic. Is it reliable? Do we have this relevant data? Do we have enough data and things like that? So now we begin to generate our thesis statement from everything that we've collected so far. And when we begin to build our thesis statement, a thesis statement is typically a sentence that states your topic and the purpose of what you're writing about. It usually involves evidence as well, so along with your supporting details. So it serves as the summary or the claim that you'll be making throughout the paper you are writing. And within English writing, a great thesis statement usually directs the structure of the essay and how you will be structuring what you'll be talking about specifically within each paragraph or in each section of your writing. So it'll allow the reader to understand the ideas you will discuss within your paper. So then within thesis statement, this is a general formula that works for me for all types of research. And it involves having that topic, your narrow topic, and the controlling idea. So this is sort of acts as the narrow topic. So we have a topic and sort of a narrow topic plus the evidence and what we'll be focusing on. The controlling idea is, it sort of tells the reader what we'll be talking about from the topic itself. So then an example here for a thesis statement, we have this topic plus controlling idea plus evidence, right? So let's go back to the minimalist lifestyle again as our topic. And then, our narrow topic was why people choose a minimalistic lifestyle. But this is going to change because after we've asked all those questions, the question categories about that narrow topic, we then can pick something specifically what we want to focus on. And here, assuming that I did the research and I asked all those questions, this is what I want to focus on now. So like how does minimalist lifestyle help people? How does it help people live a good life? So that's our main controlling idea now towards the topic, and that's our new narrow topic. So now we want to attach this evidence to those two things here. And three things that maybe I found these three resources that were really great to, support this topic and controlling idea. And I chose, it helps people live a good life in mental health, in the environment, and helps them become financially stable. So those three things is probably what I want to focus on that helps me talk about how minimalist lifestyle helps people to live a good life. And once we have these three things here, we can combine them to create this thesis statement. And with this first thesis statement here, I'm combining these three things. So living a minimalist lifestyle helps people live a better life, improving mental health, financial instabilities, and the environment. So here we're involving the topic, minimalist lifestyle. It helps people live a better life, the controlling idea, and we're adding the evidence. How does it add the evidence? So we're improving mental health, financial instabilities, and the environment. And it doesn't have to be in this order. And another way to do it is just mix things up a little bit. And an example of that is here on the bottom. So it's the same thing, but it's worded a little differently. So choosing a minimalist lifestyle focuses on improving, that should be on improving mental health, financial instabilities, and the environment. Therefore, helping people live a better life. So it's up to us to sort of rearrange some things to where it will fit the language that we're speaking when we're coming up with a thesis. And once we have this thesis, it gives us a better idea into structure and how we're going to put things in order and how we're going to talk about it in our essay. And thesis statements, as a review, it belongs within your intro, right? In the intro at the very top of the page. And that's where you're introducing to the reader what you're going to be talking about. And once we have our thesis statement, we can then structure it within the sentence itself. So here we'll be focusing on mental health first, and financial instabilities, and then the environment. And that's how we can structure our actual paper. So the first thing we'll talk about is mental health. Everything about mental health. How does it improve? How does that help people live a good life as minimalists? And into financial instabilities and into environment. How does it help the environment? So forth. So this is crucial in beginning to start that research is the thesis portion. All right, so once we've done that, we're ready to start generating everything that we got. And now we're ready to start our paper completely. And just as a review, just as sort of like this cycle, right? You know, if at any point you don't find enough sources or anything like that, then we have to start back over to number one, with define a topic, with to narrow it down, with collect enough resources available within the topic, and then we have to build that thesis statement. So anytime something in the cycle breaks off, we have to go back to that number one and with start over so that it fits, you know, it fits your instructor's assignments, or you know, it doesn't have enough purpose to it. It's not current. It's not interesting enough. Any type of way that you feel through this process, try to start back over and find a different topic and so forth. And this is sort of related to, you know, our way of thinking, right? Our philosophy, the net philosophy, within the Thesis, not ina and season. You know, we can relate this to our own net philosophy. You know, with Thesis, we're thinking, right? We're thinking about the topic. We're starting to find that topic. We're starting to narrow a topic down. And then when we go into the cycle of planning, we're starting to collect and plan, question our topic, and sort of build this paper from the ground up. We're starting to collect everything, the sources. And then when we get into three, just where we're living, we start to build that thesis from what we have. We start to implement it into how we're going to write this paper. And once we have everything connected, we go back to evaluating Thesis. That's where we evaluate and we reflect on what we just generated as a topic. Should we go forth with it or should we not? Is it strong enough? And things like that. So anytime with this cycle, even with the net philosophy, we always have to go back to Nantakias. So it's basically the same thing. And this research process in the beginning, generating ideas before we even start the paper, this whole thing that we're doing now, we're thinking about our paper, right? So what we're doing now is involved within the Thesis as a whole within your research process. So then if we go into we're planning our research. Now we're conducting how we're going to use everything we have. And then 3 is actually writing the paper. Then 4 is looking at our whole entire research paper and what we wrote. So this whole thing fits within a whole nother cycle. This is just a little part of, you know, the entire research. So I think that was the end of it. That's the only portion I'm going to cover today, is just how to generate ideas and how to actually get started with your research and things like that. All right, let's go get into some questions. All right, let's see. So is it limited to magazines? Are magazines valid? Again, magazines, it depends, because magazines are public domain, right? And it depends on the research that you're doing and what kind of data that you want for magazines to fit within your type of sources that you want. But magazines they're not limited to anything. It just depends on what you're actually going to be talking about. All right, so again, this copy of this presentation will be provided on our YouTube channel, and that would, I don't have a link to it, but it's within our internal webpage again on MyTheNet College. And within MyTheNet College, within your students tab, where all of your finances and your grades and things are there like that, that's where you can find Learning Center resources. And within that portion, that's where everything about the Learning Center, all of our information, everything's provided within there. It has access to videos, our YouTube channel, our Facebook, and things like that. Even tutor schedules. You can schedule appointments within there, live appointments. You want to schedule a Zoom session or a group study session within a topic and things like that. So that's where you can find us at. And then let's see. I have a question that says, do you know anything about the Follett books? I just know the e-Follett books are from, that's a company that the Net College uses for us to purchase books. And those are a source that you can use if you want to purchase any of those Follett books. Those are instructional books that we can use within our writing as well. I will not be attending tomorrow's session. Again, it'll be uploaded to our YouTube channel. I think we'll mass email it to all students so they can view it as well. So yeah, anytime you have any questions or in the future, you can just contact me or the Learning Center. So my email is quayazi@thenetcollege.edu. You can also find me within the directory. I'm the professional writing tutor. That's my title here at the Net College. Or you can just simply email the Learning Center, and then they can direct you to me, and I can answer as much questions as you want about the research process, because I know we only had an hour to do this webinar. But in the future, I know students are focusing now on starting their research papers at the beginning of the semester, and through the semester, I want to specifically finish the research process into how to use language and tone and purpose, and how to use those resources within your actual writing, within the body of work, and how we relate it to the audience. How can we use things like persuasive language and things like that? There will be other webinars in those portions there, but now we're just starting. We're focusing on actually getting started. Let's go start thinking about our topics and things like that. The campus is not open I believe it is open, but the Learning Center specifically is not open to students. We're doing everything online this semester. Yeah. So again, my name is Quayazi. I'm the professional writing tutor with the Learning Center. I hope you guys enjoyed this webinar. Again, just contact me if you have any questions. I believe there is an evaluation that I strongly encourage you guys to participate in. And I'm going to hand it to Deanna to explain that portion. Deanna, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. So thank you everybody for attending. I'm gonna put the link to the evaluation. So this evaluation, we try to do evaluations after every workshop, and it's just to help us improve and what we could do next time and stuff like that. So please fill it out. Hold on.
Also, make sure if you guys want, I have MLA and APA citations coming up next week, again, Thursday and Friday. Those times are actually going to be 2 to 3 o'clock on Thursday and Friday. Within that webinar, I'll be going into citations specifically in MLA with MLA guidelines. So how to do in-text citations, how to do the works cited page, and how to relate the information between one another and things like that. I think that would be very helpful as well So look out for the Zoom link on that one. So next week for MLA and APA, they'll both be 2 sessions within the day. Just a reminder.
Okay, I put the survey link in the chat box, but I think when you end, it'll send you to that page as well. So please fill them out. Is there any other questions before we end?
All right, I don't think there's anyone. So, okay. Thank you again, everyone, for attending this webinar. I appreciate everyone who attended. I hope this was very helpful for you guys. And I look forward to seeing and speaking to some of you in the future. And I hope you guys attend my webinars later on in the future as they start to flow in. So thank you again. Yeah.
Okay, so tomorrow we'll begin at 1 o'clock again. We'll see you guys tomorrow. If not, have a good weekend, students. Work hard on your assignments, and remember, we are here for you. Go next.